Hey there, Flux here, and today I'll show you how to make a turntable kind of like this, where you can just grab any item, put it on the turntable, it will move it to the center of the object, and then you can just freely rotate it like this. But yeah, let's hop right into that. Alright, so first things first, we'll go to Create New, 3D Model, and then Quad. We don't actually need the shape of the quad, but we do need the other components. So we'll open this in the inspector, get rid of the quad mesh, attach component, assets, procedural meshes, and then we want a circle mesh, since it's going to be our platform that we actually put stuff on. You don't have to change this at all. It usually is pretty much as you want it for this level of object. There we go. And now instead of having a quad, we have this circle here. Let's just quickly rename that to circle. Now that we have this circle, we need to actually set it up so we can rotate this circle. So the next thing we now need to do is make a parent for this circle, and then a second parent. The second parent that we have in between the parent and the circle itself we'll call rotator, which is going to be where the actual component is going to be to rotate the object. Then we go to circle, grab the grabbable, move it over into the circle parent instead. And on rotator, we'll click attach component, transform, interaction, joint. Now by default, this is not going to do anything yet other than let us attach our laser like this, which is really fun. But what we have to do is have to first enable don't drive. This will make it behave nicer if you are not the host and someone other than the host is trying to move it around. And then next, we want to change the axes. Currently, it's the y-axis by default, which would allow it to rotate along this axis, so like this. But we wanted to rotate around the blue axis here, which is z, so it rotates this way instead. So we'll change the axis here from y to z. And then we need to change the max twist from 0 to essentially infinity, for which we can just hold, well, the number 9 a lot, and then just enter, and it'll convert to infinity. Now, this allows us to just rotate this as much as we want. Now, the neat thing is that because of how rotations work, there's nothing we need to be worried about with how often we rotate this in one direction, even for like multiple years, because if you actually look at the values here, as this goes higher and higher, it then rolls over back into the negatives and then back over into the positives and back into the negatives and over again. Now, the one thing right now that's not the case is that if I was to de-equip this, for example, I can't put anything on here yet. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, now to set up the system for the items, first thing first, we'll go back into the rotator, make a child here, and call this child items. Now that we have this, we go back into the circle, attach a component of type transform, interaction, grabbable receiver surface. Then we want to enable parent placed, grab the item slot, and put that into the override parent. And we'll change the tween time here to 0.25, so it's a little bit smoother on the animation for it. Next, you'll see here the directions list. This is the direction from which it attaches. So for example, we wanted it to attach on top here, which is along the z-axis, not the y-axis again. So we'll get rid of this and instead put in z1. This should now already allow us to grab an object and place it on top like this. Now the important thing with these directions that you might have noticed is that technically down here would be z positive and up here z negative. However, you're basically setting the direction that it's positioning it. So if you put it above here, it's going to move it into z positive. If I had this at z negative, I could place it down here to make it move upwards. All right, so now that we have this, we can put objects on here, and they will actually rotate. However, if we pick up the object and move it off and then rotate it, it will still be attached. This is because we need to go to items, attach component, transform, tagging, and we need a grabbable reparent block. This will make it so that when we pick up an object from the slot and then let go, it cannot reparent back to that object if we grabbed it. Now, one thing that we still have to do is that if we put it down here right now and we rotate it, it won't be at the center of our table, so it'll not properly rotate. So let's go into fixing that. All right, so the first thing we'll do is add another child. This child here, I'm just going to call ref. And it's going to be, again, underneath the rotator. It doesn't have to be. Technically, we could just move this into the circle parent here. Does not matter where this is. We just need this, essentially, as a slot that moves a different slot. Next, we want to have a reference to the slot in Flux. And we want to get a transform. Where is it there? Transform, global transform. Not global, but set global position. There it is. Notice local. There. Set global position. Then we want a interaction node. Specifically in grabbable, we have onGrabbable receiver surface received. In here, we will fill out the grabbable receiver surface. This will make it so that we get a reference to the grabbable component when we put something on the receiver surface. But we actually don't want the grabbable. We want the slot that the grabbable is on. So we'll use a getSlot node in the slots category. This will then output the specific slots that the grabbable is on. By then hooking this on received into the set global position, this now means that if we put something down there onto the turntable, it'll update the position of our reference point. Next, we actually do need to go to transform again and get global transform in order to position the object properly. So now I can put this down here and it'll have moved the ref to where the object was. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the center of this object is here, but ref gets positioned up here because it gets positioned the moment I let go. The way that we fix this is that we actually go back into circle here, grab a reference, a source specifically though, to the tween time, go into operators, addition, scroll down to value add, and we get a float addition node, and add 0.1 to the tween time. Then we go into flow. And we'll grab a delay of type float. And if you try to hook this up right now, it wouldn't work because this requires an async. So what we have to do here is we have to go back into the flow category, into async, and we need a start async task. Then we can put the onGrabbable surface received into the start async task, and the task start into the delay. We put this behind this getSlot and make a relay by grabbing the wire here. And there we go. Now, this pulse here will happen exactly 0.1 seconds after the object is finished animating. By then hooking this into the set global position, now the ref is actually properly positioned at the center of the object. However, as you may notice, the actual center of this object is here, but the global position of it is here. This is because the actual tool is offset from its root. This is common on a lot of objects. Now, a lot of other objects may not have this issue, but any tool or something like that will have that issue simply because of how they are made. So what we can do to fix that is, instead of using the global transform here, we will instead move into transform again, but this time into bounds, and we'll compute bounding box. This will be again based on the slot of the object. And the coordinate space we're going to be using here is just going to be root. So we'll go to slots, root slot. Then we want to get the bounding box properties. So by getting the center here, we now have the center point of an object in global space, which means if you hook up that center here into the set global position, now ref gets positioned based on the center of the bounding box of the object, rather than just the pivot center of the object. Now that we have this set up, we just need to make it actually move the tool to the center of the turntable. All right, so the first thing now that we're going to do is we will reset ref positionally to 0, 0, 0, fix its rotation to 0, 0, 0, and then we'll give it a parent, ref parent. This will allow us to move ref around while still being able to easily remember where its 0 point is supposed to be. Now, what we need is to go to slots, set parent, which will allow us now, after actually positioning ref at the object, to grab the object we positioned and parent it into ref. I'll just grab this here slightly, just push it behind so it's out of sight. There you go. This will, as I said before, parent the object to ref. It's still at the wrong position, but at least now the object is parented to ref. Then we need to do a simple thing called a tween, which is actually going to be where we start moving the object. This requires us to have a reference to the source value and a reference to the actual field that we're animating. So we'll grab the position of ref and make a source and a reference. Slot the reference into the target and the source into the from, which is the position that we start at. Then we want to go to operators again, packing, unpack free, float free. There we go. And we will immediately just pack this again. Where is float free? There it is. And we only want to preserve the z-axis, which is our up-down in this case, which then goes into our 2 slot, and let's again set a nice duration like 0.25 once more. Or we could even just not set it here and instead grab the tween time here, slot that into the duration, make it a bit prettier so it doesn't intersect. And now our duration time is going to be the exact same as the time for the tweening initially. Now that we actually have this, we just need to grab the set parent and plug this into here, get another set parent, and once we're done animating, we want to, where do we have it there? Instance. We want to grab the instance here again and reparent it into the item slot that we previously had it in when we actually put it down, which is this items slot here. This is going to be the final parent for it right here. There we go. So now what it's going to do is it's going to immediately move ref to the object once it's done animating, parent the object to ref, and then move ref into the center and then simply deparent the object again. To showcase this easily, I'll just equip my tool, place it on the rim here, and you can see how it just moves it over. It just yoinks it to the center. This allows me now to nicely rotate the object. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little video, and I hope you have a nice day. Leave a like if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!